Take your hands off me, Chris. Her voice didn't crack. Chris laughed, the same laugh that used to charm waitresses and terrify her in the kitchen at 2 a.m. You think you can keep my son from me, he snapped. I'm 7 months pregnant, she said. You don't even know if it's a boy. And then his hand shot out. Fast. Too fast. His fingers wrapped around her throat. Gasps rippled across Maplewood Park. A toddler dropped his juice box. 2 teenagers froze mid-selfie. An older couple on a bench stood up halfway, then sat back down. Because people don't move. They watch. Naomi's hands flew to Chris's wrist. Her breath shortened. Her vision narrowed. Not again. Not in public. Not when she had promised herself. Never again. Let go, she rasped. He leaned closer, his jaw tight, the faint smell of expensive cologne mixed with rage. You humiliated me in court, he hissed. You think you're walking away with half my company and my kid? It wasn't half, she wheezed. It was what I built. And then, a voice behind them. Measured. You have 3 seconds to remove your hand. Chris turned his head. Everyone did. The man standing 10 feet away didn't look like a hero. He looked annoyed. Early 30s. Tailored navy shirt. Rolled sleeves. Hair slightly wind-tossed. Not bulky. Not flashy. Just steady. He stepped forward slowly. And then he did something strange. He removed 2 rings from his right hand. 1 plain gold band. 1 heavier signet ring. He placed them carefully on the park bench, next to a half-knitted baby blanket Naomi had been working on. An old woman with the poodle whispered, "Oh Lord." Chris scoffed. "Mind your business." The man tilted his head slightly. "I am." And in one clean motion, he grabbed Chris's thumb and twisted. There was a crack. Not loud, but final. Chris screamed. Naomi stumbled backward, coughing, clutching her stomach. The man caught her before she hit the grass. "You're safe," he said quietly. She stared at him, still gasping. Safe. She didn't remember what that felt like. Chris fell to his knees, cradling his wrist. "You psycho. Do you know who I am?" The man looked down at him almost sympathetically. "Yes," he said. "Unfortunately." Sirens wailed in the distance. Phones were raised everywhere now. Naomi's heart pounded in her ears. Her body shook. The baby kicked. Hard. She grabbed the stranger's shirt. "My baby." He placed a hand gently over hers. "Breathe. With me." She didn't know his name. Didn't know his face. But she breathed. In. Out. Chris spat at the ground. "You're dead. Both of you." The stranger didn't react. Instead, he leaned closer to Chris and spoke quietly enough that only Naomi heard. "You should have read the fine print before threatening her." Chris blinked. "What?" The sirens grew louder. Police cars rolled up along the curb. An officer rushed over. What happened here? And then chaos. Witnesses talking at once. Teenagers replaying video. The poodle barking hysterically. Naomi's hands trembled as she tried to stand. "I don't want to press charges," she muttered. The officer stared at her. "Ma'am," he had his hand around your throat. Chris snapped. "She's unstable. She's been emotional all week." The stranger stood. And suddenly the air changed. "I own this park," he said calmly. The officer paused. "I beg your pardon. It's leased under Ashford Urban Developments. That's my company." Chris's face went pale. The stranger continued. "And Mr. Chris Reeves is currently seeking an expansion contract from us. Isn't that right?" Chris's mouth opened. Closed. The old couple on the bench exchanged a look that said, "Oh, this just got interesting." Naomi blinked. "Expansion contract?" Chris had told her his company was struggling, that he might have to downsize. "You lying snake," she whispered. Chris shot her a venomous look. The stranger turned to the officer. "I'll cooperate fully, but I would like medical evaluation for her immediately." Naomi tried to protest. "I'm fine." "You're not," he said gently. And for some reason, she believed him. As paramedics approached, the old woman with the poodle leaned close to Naomi and whispered, "Honey, when a man takes off his rings before a fight, he's either dangerous or disciplined. Either way, you keep him." Naomi let out a broken laugh despite herself. The stranger almost smiled. Almost. Chris was being lifted to his feet. "You think this is over?" he shouted. "I will bury you." The stranger retrieved his rings from the bench, slipped them back on slowly. "No," he said. "You won't." And then he added, almost conversationally, "Because as of this morning, your primary investor withdrew." Chris froze. "That's impossible. Check your phone." Chris fumbled with his good hand. His face drained of color. You can't just." "I can." Naomi's stomach dropped. She looked at the stranger. "Why?" He met her eyes for the first time fully. There was something there. Not pity. Not flirtation. Recognition. "I don't like men who forget women helped build their empires," he said. Her throat tightened. Chris lunged forward suddenly despite the officers. "You planned this." The stranger didn't flinch. "No," he said softly. "You did." The paramedic touched Naomi's shoulder. "Ma'am, we need to check the baby." The word baby broke something inside her. All the court dates. All the spreadsheets. All the nights she stayed up calculating payroll while Chris slept. And now this. Tears slid down her cheeks. Not delicate. Not cinematic. Ugly. Angry. Relieved. The stranger looked uncomfortable with her crying. He cleared his throat. "My driver will follow the ambulance," he said. "You don't have to," she began. "Yes," he interrupted quietly. "I do." Chris was shoved into the back of a patrol car. He leaned out the window and shouted one last thing. "You think he's your hero? Ask him about Chicago." The stranger went still. Just for a fraction of a second. Naomi noticed. Chicago. The patrol car door slammed. Sirens again. As they wheeled her toward the ambulance, Naomi grabbed the stranger's hand. "What happened in Chicago?" For the first time, his composure cracked. Just slightly. "Something I couldn't fix," he said. And that was when Naomi noticed. The gold band he wore was scratched, worn thin, old. The signet ring? Engraved. With initials that weren't his. The ambulance doors began to close. "Wait," she said quickly. "I don't even know your name." He stepped closer. For a moment, the park noise faded. "My name is Elijah Park," he said. "And I think your ex just made the biggest mistake of his life." The doors shut. But as the ambulance pulled away, Elijah's phone buzzed. He looked down. One text message. "Unknown number. You should have stayed out of this." Chicago wasn't an accident. Elijah's jaw tightened. Across the street, a black SUV idled. Watching. If you want to know what happened next, don't go away. Subscribe to this channel because the story is just beginning. Inside the ambulance, Naomi's monitor beeped irregularly. The paramedic frowned. "Ma'am, how long have you been having chest pain?" Naomi blinked. "What chest pain?" The machine beeped louder. Outside, Elijah looked up. Something was wrong. And this time, he might already be too late. Naomi's vision swam as the paramedic guided her onto the stretcher. Her hand was clamped over her stomach, fingers trembling. She didn't want to cry, but the heat of fear, relief, and exhaustion pressed against her chest like a brick. "Ma'am, we need to get a heartbeat on the baby," one paramedic said, his voice gentle but firm. "It's fine," Naomi whispered, almost laughing. "I swear it's fine." The ambulance sirens screamed as they pulled onto the main road, but the shrill wail wasn't what made her skin crawl. It was the sense of eyes watching, still, because Maplewood Park had not forgotten her. And neither had Chris Reeves. Back across the street, Chris's expression had shifted. The wrist splint the officers applied barely restrained him. His eyes weren't full of fear. They were sharp, calculating. He wasn't just angry, he was plotting. By the time Naomi arrived at St. Vincent Hospital, the lobby had already been swarming. Reporters with cameras pressed their faces to the glass. Social media notifications had exploded during the 15-minute drive. Chris had already whispered his version to every outlet he controlled. "Billionaire attacks family man," flashed on someone's phone. "Pregnant woman threatened in City Park." Another headline, "Urban development mogul goes violent over custody dispute." Naomi's chest tightened. She was supposed to be safe in the ambulance, and yet her life had become a circus. Her sister Lillian arrived moments later, carrying 2 oversized tote bags, one with snacks, one with documents, both smelling faintly of lavender. "You look terrible," Lillian said, sliding an arm under Naomi's. "And don't argue. You almost died." Naomi gave a half smile, half grimace. "I almost did." "Almost." Lillian's eyes narrowed. "Do you even know what he could do next?" Naomi shook her head. "I can't, I just..." Her voice cracked, but not from weakness. From disbelief. "He just didn't care. Not in public. Not in private. He didn't even blink." Meanwhile, across town, Chris Reeves' phone was buzzing. Calls from lawyers, reporters, and investors. He was a man who had built towers and networks, not small regrets. Yet, as he stared at the screen, he realized something unnerving. His empire had shaken in 15 minutes. Elijah Park hadn't just defended Naomi. He'd attacked Chris's financial lifeline, pulling contracts, freezing accounts, subtly hinting at compliance. Hours later, Naomi's obstetrician entered the room, clipboard in hand. "You're stable. The baby's stable. But," she said, looking Naomi straight in the eyes, "we need you to stay calm. Stress can trigger preterm labor, especially after trauma like this." "Yours." Chris had no idea how much power had been silently aligned against him until now. Naomi blinked at the woman, words catching in her throat. "Calm? Are you kidding me? He almost," she swallowed. "And now he's going to ruin us in the press." The doctor's hand on hers was firm. "Then we focus on what we can control." Naomi wanted to scream. Control. She had none. Not over her body. Not over her ex-husband. Not over the media frenzy that had turned her trauma into a spectacle. By evening, the first legal filings appeared online. Chris's lawyers had drafted assault, defamation, and public endangerment charges. In bold letters, he had painted Elijah Park as the aggressor, Naomi as a vulnerable bystander caught in the crossfire. Social media was ablaze. Naomi's name was trending under hashtags like #PregnantAndAttacked and #BillionaireBrawl. Elijah arrived quietly at the hospital. Naomi's first thought was relief. Her second, suspicion. "You've probably ruined his life," she whispered, barely able to lift her head. "I've only protected yours," Elijah said, voice low but steady. "And for the record, he'll be calling every media outlet by morning trying to spin this. He's arrogant, litigious, connected. You'll see the headlines soon." Naomi laughed bitterly. "Connected? He'll probably ruin me anyway. He owns half the city with that smug face of his. Nobody will care that I almost died in a park." Elijah crouched beside her bed, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. "They'll care when the truth comes out. When the people who follow him see he's dangerous. Not just reckless. Dangerous. And if they don't..." Naomi asked, a sharp edge in her tone. What then? He hesitated. His thumb brushed lightly over her hand. Then we make sure they do. The next morning, Chris's PR team released a polished video. He spoke softly, looking directly into the camera. I was attacked by a man I trusted. My pregnant ex-wife was in danger. I am fully cooperating with authorities, but let me be clear. I am a family man, and I will protect what is mine. Naomi watched the clip from her hospital bed. Her stomach turned, not from fear, but rage. Everything Elijah had warned about, the arrogance, the entitlement, the connections, was now on display. And the public was split. Some outraged, some skeptical, some debating who to side with. Elijah didn't say a word in public. He sent discreet text messages to media contacts, investors, and city officials. Investigate him. Check his compliance. Check the loans. Check the payroll. You'll find your answers. Naomi's heart thudded. You're not just protecting me. You're attacking him where it hurts, she murmured. Yes, Elijah said quietly. And it will hurt. For a long time. Lillian sat beside her, holding Naomi's hand, shaking her head. I don't know how you keep doing this, Naomi. The world would break me. Naomi smiled faintly, exhaustion in her eyes. It breaks everyone. You survive anyway. Or you don't. You fight anyway. The hospital room phone rang. A lawyer's name flashed. Naomi flinched. Hello, she said. Ms. Reeves, the voice said smoothly. I represent Mr. Chris Reeves. He will be filing for emergency custody, claiming you are unstable, incapable, and have endangered your child. Naomi's chest tightened. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw the phone. Instead, she whispered, Of course. That's exactly what I needed today. Elijah's hand tightened around hers. They want fear, he said softly. We give them something else. Strength. But as Naomi tried to steady her breathing, her monitor beeped sharply. The baby's heartbeat had dipped. The nurse rushed over, pressing gently on her stomach. And then Elijah's phone buzzed again. Another message. From an unknown number. You were warned. The Chicago mistake wasn't over. You're next. Naomi's stomach lurched. The blood drained from her face. Elijah looked at her, face hardening. They know where we are, he said. And it's only the beginning. Outside, the city lights flickered as the headlines updated in real time. Chris's smiling face grinned across every screen. But behind those headlines, a network of invisible power and vengeance had already begun moving. And Naomi realized, as the monitors beeped and her pulse raced, that the danger wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Naomi gripped Elijah's hand, whispering, What do we do now? Elijah's eyes darkened. We make sure he regrets every second of thinking he could control you. But neither of them knew who would move first, or how deadly the next move would be. Naomi couldn't sleep. The hospital room was quiet except for the hum of machines and the occasional squeak of a nurse's shoes. She stared at the ceiling, arms crossed over her stomach, mind spinning. Chris Reeves had filed emergency custody, and the headlines now read like a legal thriller. Pregnant woman in custody battle. Billionaire opponent attacks urban mogul. Her phone buzzed constantly. Every alert was a new threat, a new lawyer, a new reporter asking for her side. She didn't even have time to think about. Elijah sat in the corner, suit still pressed from yesterday, fingers steepled, eyes on his phone. He hadn't touched her once since she'd woken from her nap. Naomi felt frustrated. You're doing something, she said, voice sharp but tired. I can feel it. But what? Because I can't exactly go on the news and say, he's crushing my ex's empire with magical business powers. Elijah smirked faintly. Not magic. Strategy. Her brow furrowed. Strategy. You literally made him helpless yesterday. Everyone saw it. And now what? Now, he said, finally looking up, We make the world see the truth without me lifting a finger in public. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed again. He read the message, lips tightening. Good. That's done. Naomi's stomach sank. What's done? Elijah stood, walking to the window, hands behind his back, looking down at the city. His first set of contracts just got pulled. Funding frozen. Labor violations exposed. His investors are demanding answers. Naomi's jaw dropped. You wait. What? How did you even? I did it quietly, he said, turning to her. No headlines. Just leverage. One wrong move from him and it all collapses. She stared at him. You're insane. He's Chris Reeves. He doesn't fail. He will, Elijah said simply. Because for the first time, he's not dealing with a scared woman he thinks he can control. He's dealing with consequences. Real ones. Her heart raced, not from fear this time, but from the thrill of watching someone finally fight back for her. But it didn't last. A loud knock came at the hospital room door. Room 312, a woman's voice asked. Naomi turned, alarm flaring. A reporter? Hospital staff. Lillian's hand tightened on hers. A man in a pressed suit and dark sunglasses stepped in. Not a doctor. Not a nurse. A lawyer. Ms. Reeves, he said smoothly, voice sharp as glass. I represent Mr. Chris Reeves. I need to see you immediately to discuss the custody filing. You will come with me. Naomi laughed bitterly. You must be joking. This is a hospital. I'm literally pregnant. You think I'm walking anywhere with you? The man didn't smile. The court doesn't care about comfort. It cares about compliance. Now, Ms. Reeves. Compliance. Naomi cut in. You're literally threatening me while my baby's heartbeat drops on the monitor. The nurse scowled, checking the monitor. Elijah rose, moving between Naomi and the man, hands folded in front of him. She stays here. Or your next compliance issue will be filed in court by my team. You may want to sit down and rethink your approach. The lawyer's jaw tightened. Mr. Park. Elijah raised a finger. I suggest you rethink your approach. The man froze, then backed out quickly, nodding curtly. Lillian exhaled sharply. Naomi's stomach relaxed for a second, but the adrenaline was gone only to be replaced by fear. He won't stop. He's too connected. He'll hire investigators, private eyes, maybe even bribe people. He always does. Elijah shook his head. Then we make sure he can't. His PR team is scrambling. His investors are calling for audits. And as of this morning, 3 major city contracts just vanished from his portfolio. Naomi blinked. Wait. What? He can't survive that. Can he? Elijah smirked faintly. He won't survive in public opinion. And that's just the beginning. Hours later, Chris realized what was happening. The press office he personally controlled had no answers. Investors were questioning payroll irregularities. Labor violations he thought buried years ago were resurfacing online. One of his contractors quietly cancelled a multi-million-dollar bid. Every time he made a move, Elijah had already anticipated it. Naomi's phone buzzed. A text from Elijah. They're panicking. Keep calm. Don't respond publicly. She stared at it, chest tightening again. Calm. He's literally coming after my baby now. Elijah appeared beside her, kneeling slightly. Do you remember when you built your first business, in your tiny apartment, and everyone laughed at you? She nodded slowly. Yeah. My first catering company. I barely had enough for groceries. You survived that. You survived everything after that. This is no different. Except now you don't fight alone. Naomi swallowed, tears brimming. Not the ugly crying from fear. This was a different weight. Relief. Trust. Rage. All tangled. A sudden knock made them both jump. A city worker peered in awkwardly, holding an envelope. Package for Ms. Reeves. Just arrived. Priority. Naomi reached for it, ripping it open. Inside, photographs of Chris meeting a known political lobbyist with papers marked confidential. Dates, locations, meetings, enough to show manipulation, potential bribery, and influence over city contracts. Her breath caught. He's dirty, she whispered. All along. That's why he's so confident. Elijah's eyes darkened. Exactly. And now everyone else sees it. The same people who ignored your cries before are going to see who he really is. Naomi blinked. How did you get this? Elijah shrugged. Connections. Investigation. Legal leverage. Strategy. The baby kicked sharply. Naomi gasped, clutching her stomach. She felt alive, terrified, and powerful all at once. And then Elijah's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Stop interfering, or she loses everything. Naomi felt her stomach drop. She looked at Elijah. What now? He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. Now, we escalate. And we make him pay attention to every single decision he makes. Because if he threatens you, he'll lose more than he can ever imagine. But, his voice dropped. We can't predict him completely. And he's dangerous. The nurse frowned at the monitor. Ms. Reeves, blood pressure's spiking. Heart rate, baby's heartbeat is dropping again. Naomi's chest tightened. The room seemed to tilt. Fear, adrenaline, and determination collided in her body. Elijah grabbed her hand, holding it firmly. Look at me, he said, voice low but firm. You survive. We survive. We fight smarter. And if he doesn't back off, the world will see who he really is. Not just you. Not just me. Everyone. The door burst open. This time it wasn't a lawyer. Not a city worker. Not a nurse. A camera crew. Ms. Reeves. Ms. Reeves. Can you comment on the Billionaire attack incident? Was this a personal vendetta? Naomi's heart sank. Elijah tightened his grip. No, he said coldly. It's justice. And it starts now. The camera flashed. The reporters shouted. Naomi tried to breathe. And then, in the chaos, her phone buzzed again. Another message. From the same unknown number. Chicago wasn't a mistake. You think he's alone? He's bringing reinforcements. You have one day. Naomi's stomach dropped. Her pulse raced. The baby kicked violently. Elijah's jaw tightened. Reinforcements. Whoever he's calling, they're not going to see the consequences coming. Naomi swallowed. Consequences. Yes, he said. And we're about to make them unbearable. The camera crew pushed closer. Naomi's face went pale, her hands gripping Elijah's. And for the first time, she realized the fight wasn't just about her. It was about every person he had ever thought he could control. The city outside was quiet. Too quiet. And in that moment, Naomi knew the next 24 hours would decide everything. Naomi's lawyer hadn't left her side for more than 5 minutes, and neither had Lillian. The hospital room had become a chaotic war zone of phone calls, documents, and teacups forgotten on the bedside table. The television in the corner flashed Chris Reeves' smiling face. Smooth, confident, utterly untouchable. Billionaire attacks pregnant ex-wife in park, the ticker ran. Legal experts divided on custody implications. Naomi leaned back, exhausted, shaking her head. I can't believe he's trying to turn everything around. Everyone's going to believe him. Elijah crouched beside the bed, silent for a long moment. Naomi noticed his hands tremble ever so slightly as he adjusted his cufflinks. She blinked. That subtle motion, almost imperceptible, betrayed the calmness he projected. Do you want to know why I removed my rings yesterday? He asked quietly, voice low enough that only she could hear. Naomi turned her head. Her eyes were wide, expectant. "They weren't just rings," he said. "They were mine and hers. My wife's. My first. I lost her. Pregnant. Just like you. I was too late. I watched it happen. I couldn't save her. And that man," he nodded toward the window, where Chris's black SUV still lurked in the street. "He doesn't understand fear. He doesn't understand consequences. I do." Naomi's throat tightened. The room seemed to shrink around them. The hospital hum and distant chatter faded. For the first time, she realized why he had acted with such precision, such controlled fury. It wasn't just justice. It was survival. It was guilt. It was memory. "And that's why you," she began, voice breaking. "That's why you grabbed him the way you did." He nodded, a faint shadow of pain crossing his face. "I had to make sure he couldn't touch you like that. I couldn't. Not again. Not after her. Not ever again." Naomi's hand flew to her mouth. Her own grief, her own terror from the park yesterday, swelled in her chest. "Oh God," she whispered. I almost died. And I didn't even know why until now." Elijah's hand rested gently over hers. "You're alive. That's what matters." Naomi shivered. You know what it's like. The helplessness. Watching someone you love be attacked and knowing you can't do anything." He nodded again, eyes darkening. "I do. That's why I can't let it happen again. To anyone. Not you. Not a child. Not anyone he thinks he can control." They were silent for a moment, the kind of silence that carried grief, relief, and understanding all at once. It wasn't romantic. It was human. Survivors recognizing survivors. And then Naomi's lawyer burst in. "Ms. Reeves, we have the emergency custody hearing in 2 hours. Court wants statements. Evidence. You need to be present." Naomi's stomach dropped. 2 hours. She wasn't ready. She hadn't slept. She hadn't eaten. And her baby. Elijah stood beside her, calm now, the calm of someone who had seen everything before. "You don't need to fight him head-on. Not yet. Let me handle the rest." "What rest?" Naomi asked. "Everything," he said simply. "His funding. His contracts. His labor violations. Everything he built on arrogance and abuse. I'm dismantling it quietly while you focus on staying safe." Naomi blinked. You're attacking him financially? Privately? "Yes," Elijah said. "He doesn't fight by rules. Neither do I." Her phone buzzed with notifications. Investors pulling back. Contractors canceling bids. Headlines flipping from "Billionaire attacked" to "Billionaire under investigation." Naomi felt a jolt of disbelief. He was dismantling Chris's empire faster than she could even breathe. Then the court clerk's call came. "Ms. Reeves, transport is waiting. You need to appear now." Naomi glanced at Elijah, panic rising. "I can't. My baby." "You can," he said, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "And you will. I've secured the safest passage. No reporters. No interference." Minutes later, Naomi sat in a black sedan, Lillian beside her, Elijah's silent instructions echoing in her mind. The streets were crowded, reporters craning for glimpses. Her heart pounded. She felt exposed, vulnerable, terrified, but also not alone. When they arrived at the courthouse, Chris was already there, looking immaculate as ever, briefcase in hand, lawyers circling like sharks. He saw Naomi and smiled, a predator's smile. "Ah, Naomi," he said. "You're right on time. Ready to tell the truth." Naomi's hands clenched in her lap. "Truth? You mean your version?" He chuckled, arrogantly. "Of course. The only truth anyone needs is mine. People believe winners, don't they? The courtroom doors swung open. Cameras clicked. Reporters whispered. And then Elijah stepped into the hall, not beside her, not visibly with her, but into the public eye, calm and controlled. He didn't approach Chris physically. He didn't raise his voice. He simply walked to the front bench, and the air shifted. Whispers started. That's Elijah Park. He's behind Ashford Urban Developments, isn't he? Chris's confident posture faltered slightly, just enough for Naomi to notice. Elijah didn't speak. He didn't have to. Phones were buzzing, messages flying. Social media lit up. Financial bulletins showed Chris's assets freezing. Contractors were canceling. Emails leaked. Corruption evidence surfaced quietly online. Chris's empire, his pride, his identity, his public persona, was cracking. Naomi's chest tightened, not with fear but awe. He was not fighting him with fists. He was dismantling him with precision. Then, a courtroom clerk interrupted, raising a hand. "Mr. Reeves, your new filings." Chris froze, staring at his phone. His lawyers exchanged worried glances. The bailiff called the judge to the bench. Cameras clicked again. And then a voice, calm, deliberate, cut through the tension. "Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Reeves' company has been operating with serious labor violations and financial irregularities that directly affect public contracts." Chris's eyes widened. He knew that voice. Elijah Park stepped forward. He didn't yell. He didn't fight. He simply handed over the documents. Contracts, invoices, correspondence showing mismanagement, bribery, and exploitation. His rings gleamed faintly under the fluorescent lights, a reminder that he had lost, mourned, and returned stronger. Naomi felt a swell of emotion, relief, gratitude, and the sting of shared grief. This man, haunted by his past, had turned pain into protection. Trauma bonding wrapped around them in silent understanding. Two survivors, one infant at risk, one predator unmasked. Chris lunged verbally, fury cracking his voice. "This is slander, defamation, assault on my character." Elijah didn't flinch. "No," he said softly. "It's accountability. And if you touch her, or your child again, it's only going to get worse." The courtroom murmured. Chris's lawyers tried to interject, but the damage was done. Social media was already trending with leaks, headlines flipping, urban mogul under scrutiny, pregnant woman's protector exposes billionaire's empire. Naomi's hand trembled on the bench. The baby kicked sharply, and her heart thudded. She looked at Elijah. "Are we safe?" she whispered. He didn't answer immediately. He looked down, eyes haunted, the memory of his lost wife flashing briefly across his expression. Then he nodded once, firmly. "Safe enough to fight," he said. "But not safe forever." Naomi's stomach dropped. Another text buzzed on Elijah's phone, unnoticed by the courtroom. "Chicago isn't over. You were warned. He's bringing help. One day." The monitor on Naomi's wrist beeped sharply. The baby's heartbeat jumped erratically. Her breath caught. Elijah's jaw tightened. "He thinks he can overwhelm us. He can't." But outside the courthouse, a black SUV eased through the crowd, unnoticed by most, its tinted windows hiding figures watching, waiting. Naomi swallowed hard, gripping Elijah's hand. "We're not just fighting for me," she whispered. "We're fighting for every woman he thought he could control." And for the first time, she understood the weight of survival, and the depth of vengeance, and the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined. Naomi's legs trembled beneath her in the courthouse hallway. She gripped Lillian's hand so tightly she could feel the sister's pulse through her own. Her stomach twisted, half nerves, half the constant flutter from the baby. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed, and she imagined every reporter in town waiting inside the courtroom, pens poised, cameras ready. "Elijah," she whispered, barely audible. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His presence alone made the air heavier, more deliberate. The faint glint of his wedding rings caught the light again, reminding Naomi that every movement he made carried the weight of memory, trauma, and an unspoken promise. He would not fail her like he had failed his first wife. The doors opened, and they were ushered into the courtroom. Chris Reeves sat at the plaintiff's table, impeccable suit, smug grin, like the world had always bent to him. His team of lawyers hovered like a small army. Naomi's heart thudded. She could feel the collective breath of the room tighten around the opening statements. Your Honor, Chris's lawyer began, voice smooth and confident. We are here today because Ms. Reeves has demonstrated a pattern of instability. She is manipulating a wealthy individual to leverage personal gain. The park incident, he said, voice deliberate, was staged to discredit my client publicly. Naomi's jaw went tight. Lillian squeezed her hand. The world felt like it had tilted sideways. I swear. Naomi's voice cracked, but she caught herself. She swallowed, forcing calm, hoping to hold together what little composure remained. She looked across the room. Elijah sat silently, his hands folded, posture perfect, almost unreadable. He didn't flinch, didn't react, didn't let Chris's theatrics bait him. That stillness, Naomi realized, was stronger than shouting. Stronger than anger. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and no tolerance for games, called for the first witnesses. Security footage from Maplewood Park was presented. Naomi's fall, Chris's aggressive move, Elijah stepping in. The footage clearly contradicted Chris's story, showing Chris advancing, raising his hand, then Elijah intervening just in time to protect Naomi. The murmurs in the courtroom grew. Chris's smugness faltered ever so slightly, but he smiled tightly, trying to convince everyone he was still in control. Next, witnesses were called. Park joggers, a food truck vendor, and the paramedics all testified. One paramedic's voice shook as she recounted how close Naomi had been to collapse. Another jogger, an older man, admitted he had called the emergency line and tried to hold Chris back. Each testimony subtly chipped away at Chris's narrative. The courtroom cameras clicked constantly. Social media already began trending. #Billionaire exposed. #Maplewood truth. #justice for Naomi. Chris leaned across the table, whispering furiously to his attorneys, but nothing stopped the tide. Naomi's pulse quickened with each testimony. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all the women Chris had ever belittled or threatened. Then came the financial evidence. Elijah had quietly coordinated with investigators overnight. Emails surfaced showing Chris attempting to bribe a city official to influence the custody hearing, documents revealing labor violations across his companies, and evidence of misappropriated contracts intended to fund personal ventures. Naomi felt dizzy as the courtroom absorbed the information. She could hear the gasps. Chris's fingers clenched the table, knuckles white. His team scrambled, papers shuffling, whispers rising to frantic mutters. The final moment arrived. The judge looked directly at Chris. Mr. Reeves, she said, voice sharp, your actions both publicly and privately indicate a disregard for legal and ethical boundaries. The court is in receipt of evidence that you attempted bribery, manipulated employees, and misused corporate resources. These factors weigh heavily on your credibility as a guardian. Chris opened his mouth, closed it, tried to speak, but every word stumbled over the weight of the evidence. He realized in real time that the very empire he had built on arrogance and intimidation was crumbling publicly. Naomi's hands trembled, her face flush with relief and disbelief. She looked at Elijah, whose face remained calm, almost unreadable, but Naomi knew the storm behind his eyes. He had lost someone once. He had arrived too late. And now he had engineered this moment without raising a fist, without exploding, yet it had the force of a hurricane. The judge continued. Custody of the unborn child will remain with Ms. Reeves. Any further attempts to influence or intimidate the mother or child will result in immediate legal action. Chris's world tilted. For a moment, Naomi thought he might faint. His arrogance, his connections, his wealth, all meaningless against strategy, truth, and accountability. The public humiliation was complete. Cameras captured the moment, and social media erupted. Naomi's chest felt like it might burst. She looked at Elijah, seeing not just the man who had protected her, but the haunted survivor who channeled grief into precision. She realized trauma bonded them, survivor to survivor, loss to potential, pain to protection. Her phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. He's not finished. Chicago wasn't a mistake. Watch your back. Naomi's pulse quickened. She squeezed Elijah's hand. He's still coming. He nodded, still quiet, eyes like steel. Then we'll be ready. But right now, let everyone see who he really is. She felt her stomach tighten. The baby kicked sharply. And for a moment, the world narrowed down to two people in a crowded courtroom. The predator, stripped of his armor, and the survivor, standing tall, supported by quiet strength. Outside, the city lights flickered, cameras flashed, and social media exploded. Chris Reeves' empire was unraveling in real time. And Naomi realized that she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was witnessing justice. Slow, strategic, painful, and irreversible. The courtroom emptied, but the tension didn't dissipate. Chris stormed past, whispering threats, while reporters followed, eager for every moment. Naomi's hands shook. Elijah leaned close. He thinks he can intimidate you again. He won't. And if anyone else ever thinks they can touch you, they'll see this same consequence. Naomi's chest heaved with emotion. Rage, relief, awe, and gratitude tangled together. She realized that public humiliation had been reversed, but the fight wasn't over. There would be new threats, new lies, new tests of courage. She looked up at Elijah. Do we survive this? He looked down at her, haunted eyes softening. We do. Because we won't just survive. We fight smarter. We fight together. And if anyone tries to take you, they'll learn what fear really is. The unknown text buzzed again on his phone, unread by anyone else. Chicago wasn't a mistake. He's mobilizing. You have less than 24 hours. Naomi swallowed hard. The baby kicked violently again. She looked at Elijah, hand still gripping hers, a lifeline in the chaos. This is far from over, she whispered. No, he said softly. But now the world sees him for what he is. And we know the truth. That's enough to start. The courthouse doors closed behind them. But outside, a black SUV waited at the curb. And somewhere in the city, Chris Reeves was already plotting the next move. Naomi exhaled shakily, feeling the weight of survival, the sting of public vindication, and the unshakable bond forming between them. Trauma, grief, and justice intertwined in ways she had never imagined. And the world, wide and watching, would never forget this day. Naomi hadn't seen Elijah smile in weeks. The courthouse victory was behind them. Chris Reeves' empire had faltered publicly, and the world had shifted. But inside their quiet moments, a tension lingered, one she couldn't name until now. She found him sitting in his office, late evening, city lights painting angular shadows across his face. He looked calm as always, but something in the way he rubbed his temple made her pause. Elijah, she said softly. You've been different. He didn't answer immediately. His hands hovered over a stack of files, contracts, emails, financial documents, all evidence of Chris's misdeeds that had yet to fully unravel. Finally, he looked up. His eyes were dark, tired, haunted. I'm fine, he said. Naomi studied him. Fine didn't explain the faint tremor in his hands, the way he swallowed hard when he thought no one was looking, or the slight tilt of his head as though pain was pressing on it. You're lying, she said, sharper than she intended. Something's wrong. He looked away. For a long moment, the silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Finally he spoke, voice low and clipped. I've had this for months. Didn't want anyone to know. Didn't want pity. Didn't want excuses. Naomi's stomach lurched. What? What are you talking about? A brain tumor, he said quietly. The words landed like stones. Discovered 2 months ago. Aggressive. I haven't told anyone. Didn't want it to distract from you. Naomi's hands flew to her mouth. Her heart pounded in a rush that matched the baby's fluttering movements. Elijah. I couldn't stop him, he said, almost to himself. I couldn't prevent every threat. I couldn't save my first wife. But I could protect you. While I still could. And I will as long as I can. The weight of it hit Naomi in waves. Relief, fear, gratitude, and heartbreak all colliding. Her chest tightened. She gripped his hands, feeling how cold and slightly stiff they had become. You've been carrying this while, all of this, she whispered. While fighting Chris, handling the court, protecting me, the baby. He shrugged faintly. Some battles require silence. Some pain requires action. Naomi blinked back tears. But you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to hide from me. He smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. I've survived by keeping it hidden. I can't change that now. Outside, the world was turning, but inside the office, time slowed. Naomi realized then what trauma bonding had really done. She understood him in ways no one else could. Loss, grief, survivor's guilt, rage, and determination all wrapped into one person who had chosen to protect despite being haunted. Their moment was interrupted by the sharp ping of her phone. A message flashed. Chris Reeves just moved to secure new private investigators. He's planning to gather evidence against you. Emergency briefing requested. Naomi's pulse spiked. He's not finished. Elijah leaned back in his chair, mask of calm returning. No. He's escalating. But he's predictable. And predictable is manageable. Hours later, in a secure office filled with monitors, Elijah oversaw every move Chris attempted. Emails intercepted. Private investigators countered. Contractors quietly threatened with legal action if they complied with Reeves' latest schemes. Every maneuver Chris made to regain control of his reputation and assets was met with silent, surgical precision from Elijah. But even as Chris's plans faltered, Naomi could see the toll on Elijah. He rubbed his forehead, grimaced briefly, and paused mid-call. Naomi noticed for the first time that he sometimes slumped into his chair, exhaustion pressing down hard. Elijah, she whispered again, moving closer. You need to rest. You can't keep doing this alone. You're not invincible. He looked at her, eyes dark and almost feral. I have to. If I stop, he wins. And if he wins, your baby, everyone, loses. Naomi swallowed. But what about you? What about surviving? You're not just protecting me, you're living under this constant weight. You could collapse at any moment. Elijah's jaw tightened. Then I'll collapse on my terms, not his. Every second I fight. Every strategy, every call, every leak, every exposed lie, it's for you. For the baby. For justice. A monitor beeped sharply. One of Chris's new attempts had triggered an alert. Naomi watched as Elijah calmly issued countermeasures, freezing new bank accounts, exposing new shady dealings, quietly leaking evidence to the media without revealing himself. Hours blurred. Naomi's exhaustion collided with exhilaration, anger, and fear. Chris Reeves, who had thought himself untouchable, was unraveling publicly. Every new headline detailed another misstep, another failed attempt, another betrayal exposed. Then Elijah leaned back, rubbing his temple again. Naomi noticed his face tighten in pain, subtle but undeniable. The silent admission that he was human, fragile, and hiding more than anyone could imagine, landed heavily on her. You're not just protecting me, she said, voice shaking. You're carrying everything. Your grief, your loss, your past. And now this tumor. And you do it all for me. He nodded slowly, a faint, haunted smile crossing his lips. Some debts must be paid. Some losses redeemed. Some lives protected before it's too late. I've lost before. I won't lose again. Naomi's hands trembled as the baby kicked sharply. The reality of it, Elijah's vulnerability, his humanity, his relentless determination, hit her with unbearable clarity. She felt rage on her behalf, sorrow for what he had endured, and gratitude for what he was willing to risk. A text buzzed again on her phone, from an unknown number. Chicago isn't finished. He's bringing lawyers, allies, investigators. One day. You will see. He won't stop. Naomi's chest tightened. The world outside could be full of chaos, threats, and media frenzy, but inside, she knew she wasn't facing it alone. The emotional bond, trauma-bonded and shared through grief, fear, and survival, strengthened them both. Elijah, she whispered, tears spilling over. We can survive this. Together. You're not alone anymore. He exhaled, a rare moment of vulnerability slipping through. I've learned how to survive alone. But surviving with someone, it's new and terrifying. But right now, necessary. The door to the office clicked. Naomi looked up. Outside, the black SUV from before eased down the street. Dark tinted windows. Figures inside, watching. Waiting. Her pulse quickened. The baby kicked again violently. Elijah's hand brushed over hers, gripping it tight, steady, determined. We've won today, he said quietly. But tomorrow, he's coming back. Naomi swallowed hard. And we'll be ready. Elijah's jaw tightened. We have to be. Because this isn't just a battle over money, control, or reputation. This is about safety, justice, and survival. And if we fail, it will cost everything. The office fell into a tense silence, broken only by the faint hum of monitors and the distant city lights. Outside, Chris Reeves was already mobilizing. Inside, Naomi realized the stakes had shifted. This wasn't just about her custody or Chris's empire. It was about survival, strategy, and facing trauma together. And neither she nor Elijah could afford mistakes. The black SUV paused across the street. Its headlights glinted ominously. Naomi's heartbeat spiked. The protector, silent, haunted, and strategic, straightened in his chair. And then, for a fleeting moment, a sharp pain hit Elijah's temple. His hand pressed against it instinctively. Naomi gasped. Are you okay? She asked. He didn't answer immediately. His jaw tightened. Then he whispered, almost to himself, I'll survive, until I can't. The first cries shattered the quiet of the hospital room. Naomi's hands were trembling, slick with sweat and tears, as the nurses lifted the tiny, red-faced infant and placed him on her chest. The world narrowed to the soft rise and fall of the baby's chest, the warmth against her, and the sudden, overwhelming sense of life continuing despite the chaos outside. Elijah, she whispered through exhausted breaths, eyes brimming with tears. She had named the baby Jonah, after him, a tribute to the man who had fought, hidden, and suffered for them both. A soft knock interrupted the moment. Elijah appeared in the doorway, immaculate even after weeks of sleepless nights and tension. His eyes flickered with pain, fatigue barely concealed, but they lit up at the sight of the baby. He stepped forward slowly, careful not to startle Naomi. He's cute, he said, voice low, almost reverent. He reached out, hesitated, then allowed his fingers to brush the baby's tiny hand. Jonah's grip tightened instinctively, and Elijah's lips twitched into a faint, haunted smile. Naomi looked at him, tears spilling down her cheeks. He's yours. Your name. Your protection. Everything you fought for. It's alive here. Elijah swallowed hard, jaw tightening. And I'll fight to make sure it stays alive, he whispered. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder. No one will touch you. No one. Not him. Not anyone. Outside, the city hummed with the chaos of Chris Reeves' next move. Naomi had expected weeks of quiet after the custody victory, but Chris was relentless. Investigators, hired goons, and media manipulators were already coordinating to regain leverage. Elijah had known it, anticipated it, and yet, he had concealed his own deterioration to ensure Naomi could deliver safely. She glanced up at him. "You've been hiding something from me, haven't you?" He looked away briefly, then back, eyes dark. "Months. I didn't want pity, distraction, or excuses. The tumor. It's worse than I let on. But I couldn't let it interfere with you, with this." He gestured toward the baby. "With him." Naomi's stomach clenched. She wanted to cry, scream, and shake him all at once. "You've been fighting him while fighting your own body?" Elijah nodded. "I have to be here for you both. Every strategy, every leak, every legal maneuver, every obstacle, it's all for survival. For Jonah. For you. For justice." Naomi's pulse spiked, anger and awe mingling. You're human," she whispered. "And yet you've carried this alone? This madness." He shook his head, faint smile crossing his lips. "Some things can't wait. Some battles have to be fought quietly. Some threats require every ounce of patience and precision." And then the nurse's phone buzzed. Naomi's pulse raced again. A message flashed across the screen. "Mr. Reeves has escalated. Private investigators are watching. Threats may be immediate. Stay vigilant." Naomi looked at Elijah. "He won't stop. He'll try to take Jonah." Elijah's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure he can't. Every move he makes, I anticipate. Every ally, every loophole, every contract, controlled. I'll dismantle him without raising a hand." But Elijah didn't move toward the monitors this time. His fingers brushed lightly over his temple, a faint wince hidden beneath the calm exterior. Naomi saw it. And she realized, this fight was not just strategic, it was personal. The man who had saved her, protected her, and dismantled a billionaire's empire was now fighting a battle he hadn't shared. A battle against time, against his body, against a disease that could strike silently and swiftly. Minutes passed, the baby resting between them, fragile and alive. Naomi whispered, voice thick. "We can't let him win. Not Chris. Not fear. Not this." Elijah exhaled, brushing a lock of hair from Naomi's forehead. "We won't. Not while I can think, act, or breathe. And I will make sure the world sees him for what he truly is." Suddenly, Naomi's phone buzzed again. It was a video clip sent anonymously. Chris Reeves in a downtown construction site, aggressively confronting a contractor, waving a briefcase, muttering threats, and leaving after a man slipped and nearly fell. It was a clear public endangerment incident, captured from a rooftop camera. Naomi's pulse skyrocketed. "He's escalating. He's reckless." Elijah's calm returned, measured and deliberate. "Exactly as I predicted. Now everyone sees it. His arrogance, his danger. He's painting himself as the villain, exposing himself further. We don't need to fight physically. The law, the public, the evidence. They will dismantle him for us." Naomi nodded, gripping the baby closer. She could feel Jonah's tiny heartbeat sync with her own, a reminder that survival wasn't abstract. It was tangible and precious. A sharp knock on the hospital room door made them both tense. A courier stepped in, hands gloved, holding an envelope marked urgent. Legal documents. Naomi's hands trembled as she opened it. Chris had filed yet another emergency motion, alleging she was unstable, claiming she had manipulated Elijah, and questioning her mental fitness for custody. Elijah leaned in, reading quickly. "He's grasping at straws. But it doesn't matter. We have evidence, witnesses, footage, and public exposure. He's already losing, again." Naomi looked at him, fear and awe mingling. "He's relentless." Elijah nodded. "Yes. And that's why we need to stay vigilant. Not scared. Not reacting blindly. We act strategically, patiently, and he collapses under his own arrogance every time. Naomi hugged him briefly, feeling his warmth and fragility. Promise me, you'll take care of yourself too. He gave her a faint, haunted smile. I will, for as long as I can. Not forever, but long enough for Jonah. And that's what counts. Hours later, Naomi held her baby close, exhausted but alive. Elijah sat in the corner, quiet, monitoring Chris's next moves. They were winning, yes, but the shadow of his tumor, of months hidden from everyone, loomed over them both. Then, a new alert flashed across Elijah's secure feed. A coalition of Chris's allies were converging, using political connections and media manipulation to undermine the hospital's security. Naomi's heart froze. Elijah. They're coming now. He stood slowly, every motion deliberate, jaw set, fingers brushing over his temple again, pain flashing briefly across his face. Let them come. Every move they make will only expose them further. Every threat, every lie, it will unravel. Outside the window, the city lights flickered. The black SUVs appeared again, moving carefully through traffic. Naomi clutched Jonah tighter. Elijah stepped forward, placing himself between her and the window, a wall of silent protection. But for the first time, Naomi saw not just a protector. She saw a man haunted, vulnerable, but still relentless. A man willing to fight through his own mortality to protect the life in her arms. The door to the hospital room clicked again. Shadows moved in the hallway. Naomi's pulse raced. Elijah's jaw tightened, hand brushing over his temple. A subtle wince. This is far from over, he said softly, voice low but firm. But we will survive it. Together. The door slowly opened. Figures appeared, Chris's men, cameras rolling, reporters following, ready to escalate the fight. Naomi's eyes widened, her body trembling. Elijah's hand brushed over hers, steady, unwavering. And for a fleeting moment, he whispered, "Let's see him collapse in real time." The hospital room felt smaller than usual, though it was spacious enough for monitors, nurses, and security. Naomi paced near the window, Jonah sleeping lightly in the bassinet. Her heart raced with every flicker of movement outside, every shadow passing under the blinds. Elijah sat in the corner chair, back straight, eyes fixed on a laptop. His fingers hovered over the keys, issuing instructions quietly to lawyers, private investigators, and media contacts. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He winced but kept typing, moving through Chris Reeves' coordinated assault like a general on a battlefield. Naomi's voice trembled. They're targeting the hospital now. Reporters, private investigators. Someone's trying to track us. This isn't just the custody battle. It's an attack on all of us. On Jonah. Elijah didn't flinch. Exactly. And the more desperate they are, the faster they collapse. They've mobilized every resource they have. Every one of their allies, every loophole, every connection. He paused, his hand brushing over his temple instinctively, a faint wince flashing across his face. They'll expose themselves if we let them. Patiently. Strategically. Calmly. Naomi's stomach twisted. She wanted to shout, to demand he rest, but she knew that doing so would fracture the careful control he had maintained for weeks. Instead, she sat beside him, hand over his, feeling the tremor he tried so hard to hide. He's relentless, Naomi whispered. And you're hurting. You're human. Elijah allowed a faint smile, haunted and brief. Human. Yes. But this fight isn't about me. It's about Jonah, about you, about stopping Chris Reeves from leaving a trail of destruction. I will survive long enough to protect this life. A sharp ping from the laptop interrupted them. Naomi's pulse spiked. A new headline flashed, Billionaire father targets hospital, allegedly harasses newborn family. The reporter had caught sight of a security camera from across the street, though no one recognized Elijah in the frame. He's escalating, Naomi said, panic rising. He could. Elijah silenced her with a soft touch to her arm. Let him show the world who he really is. Every lie, every reckless move. We just observe and respond strategically. Hours blurred. Naomi sat holding Jonah, rocking him gently as Elijah orchestrated legal maneuvers, media leaks, and evidence exposure. Chris's private investigators had been traced, their contracts frozen. Emails revealed new attempts at bribery. Even Chris's lawyers began withdrawing, fearing exposure. And still, Elijah didn't slow. Naomi noticed him pause occasionally, pressing his hand to his temple, grimacing softly. The truth she had tried to ignore, the tumor, was consuming him gradually, silently, while he protected them all. At one point, Naomi finally snapped. Elijah, stop. You're going to collapse, and then what? He looked at her, exhausted, haunted eyes flicking toward hers. If I collapse now, Chris wins. If I fight, strategically, even sick, even weak, he loses. And Jonah survives. That's the only thing that matters. Naomi swallowed hard. She could feel the weight of every sleepless night, every hidden pain, every silent battle he'd endured. Rage, admiration, and fear mingled inside her. The door opened. A nurse entered with a small clipboard and a discreet envelope. Mr. Reeves, a courier delivered this for you. It's urgent and confidential. Elijah took it, glancing at the contents. It was another legal motion from Chris, alleging defamation, harassment, and threats against his family. Naomi could see the desperation in Chris's words, the panic beneath the polished legal language. Elijah's fingers brushed over the envelope slowly. He's unraveling faster than he realizes, he said quietly. Every desperate move he makes exposes him more. And soon, everyone will see him for the coward he is. Naomi nodded, feeling the mix of exhaustion and awe that had become constant in their lives. She looked at her baby, Jonah, and whispered softly, "You're alive because he never gave up. Because he fought, even when he was weak." Elijah, hearing her, felt a rare, fleeting smile cross his face. He reached out, gently holding the baby. Jonah stirred, tiny fingers curling around his father's hand. For a moment, the room was still, soft, and fragile. "We've survived," Elijah murmured. "For now. But there will be more. Always more." Naomi squeezed his hand, her tears flowing freely. "And we'll face it. Together. You, me, Jonah." Hours later, the hospital quieted. The chaos outside, Chris's escalating attempts, slowed as more leaks exposed his recklessness. Social media buzzed with clips of him threatening contractors, staggering in public outbursts, and making brash decisions that only amplified his collapse. Elijah sat back in his chair, exhausted but determined. His hand brushed over his temple again, faint pain flashing, but he remained unbroken. He drafted a set of trusts for Jonah, signed them in the presence of Naomi, and recorded a short message for the child, knowing the moment might be one of the last full demonstrations of his presence in his child's life. He spoke softly into the recorder, "Jonah, if you're hearing this one day, know that your father loved you more than words. More than life itself. I fought, I endured, I lived as long as I could to protect you. Be strong. Be kind. Be brave. And remember, love always wins." Naomi wiped tears, watching him carefully. He was exhausted, fading slowly, yet he remained present, strategic, and unbroken in spirit. The room's door clicked again. Security reported movement outside, Chris's remaining allies attempting one final breach to gain information on the family, cameras flashing. Naomi's pulse quickened. She clutched Jonah tightly. Elijah placed his hand on her shoulder. "Let them come. Every move they make will be their undoing. We survive strategically, and we win." Outside, a black SUV idled, its tinted windows hiding figures who believed they could intimidate or threaten the family. Naomi whispered, voice trembling, "Elijah, you've lived through so much already. Please. He gave her a faint, haunted smile. I'll live long enough to see Jonah safe. Long enough to hold him, guide him, and leave something lasting. The black SUV began moving slowly toward the hospital. Naomi's heartbeat raced. She felt the tension coil in her chest. Elijah glanced at her, eyes dark and unwavering. Stay close. Trust the strategy. And never underestimate what the truth and patience can do. The shadows on the walls grew longer. The night pressed in. The fight was far from over. And for the first time, Naomi saw not just a protector, but a man who had fought his own mortality to ensure their survival. A man who would leave a legacy for a child who would one day hear his voice. The hospital's quiet was shattered by a single unmistakable sound. The baby's cries, echoing like a heartbeat of hope amidst chaos. Elijah looked down at Jonah, holding him close, whispering softly, "We're not done. But we've survived today. And I promise, I will fight until the end." The door to the hospital creaked. The SUV had stopped. Figures emerged. Cameras flashed. Chris Reeves' last desperate push was here. Naomi's pulse raced, the baby squirming in her arms, Elijah bracing himself with quiet strength. But the tension in the room was palpable, every second charged with threat, strategy, and hope. The first rays of dawn sliced through the hospital blinds, painting long stripes across the room. Naomi sat upright, Jonah nestled against her chest, eyes half closed, oblivious to the chaos outside. But she wasn't oblivious. She could feel it, the tension, the city's murmur of surveillance, the press vans and Chris Reeves' last desperate attempt to strike. Elijah sat slouched in the corner chair, laptop open, fingers shaking slightly as he typed. The tumor's impact was more pronounced now. Fatigue etched his face, his hand occasionally trembled as he leaned over the screen. But the determination in his eyes burned brighter than ever. "He's not going to stop," Naomi whispered, voice low, almost to herself. "He's desperate, reckless, dangerous." Elijah glanced at her, tired but unwavering. "Exactly. And desperation is predictable. Recklessness is a gift if you know where to wait. Danger is only power if you let it be." Naomi's pulse tightened. "And if he targets Jonah directly?" Elijah exhaled slowly. "Then we respond with evidence, strategy, and public exposure. Not force. Not rage. Only precision." Outside, Chris's network moved in perfect chaos. Private investigators peering into the hospital grounds, reporters leaning over cameras, and allies attempting legal pressure. Every action was an escalation. Every move was meant to intimidate, manipulate, or buy control. Naomi watched him closely. She could see the small winces, the subtle grimaces, the way his hand hovered near his temple, pressing lightly against the pain he refused to acknowledge. And she realized, this man had carried the weight of grief, rage, and danger longer than anyone could imagine. "Elijah," she said firmly, taking a step closer. "You've been the protector, the strategist, the fighter. But now it's my turn to fight with you. We can't wait. We have to act." He looked at her, eyes dark, haunted, yet proud. "Yes. It's time. But every step must be calculated. Every word, every leak, every call. It counts." Naomi's hand brushed over Jonah's tiny fingers. "Then let's show him he underestimated us." Minutes later, a press van pulled up directly outside the hospital, cameras aimed at the entrance. Chris's team was live-streaming, spinning narratives, and attempting to frame Naomi as unstable, manipulative, and reckless. The hospital security officers grew tense. Elijah leaned back, fingers brushing over his temple again. "Perfect," he murmured. "Let them broadcast themselves. Every lie, every desperate move, they're painting themselves into a corner. The public will see. They always see eventually." Naomi's jaw tightened. "I can't believe he's dragging a newborn into this." "Elijah," she whispered, voice shaking. "We need to do more than survive. We need to expose him. Completely. Publicly. Every transaction, every lie, every threat. He nodded, though a faint tremor passed through his hands. I've prepared for this. Leaks, contracts, financial trails, legal motions. Everything he touches collapses on him when the truth is revealed. But we have to be patient. We can't act rashly. The door to the hospital creaked. Security reported a group attempting to approach the entrance, cameras and microphones in hand. Chris's most audacious maneuver yet. Live exposure, legal intimidation, and media frenzy all in one push. Naomi's pulse skyrocketed. She clutched Jonah closer. Elijah stood slowly, his movements deliberate, each step careful as he approached the monitors. Let them come, he said softly, voice low, steady. They only reveal themselves further. A monitor flashed. One of Chris's allies had tripped a security alarm while trying to film from an unauthorized area. Another live feed captured a lawyer delivering an aggressive motion directly outside the hospital. Naomi swallowed hard, feeling fear mix with awe. Elijah, you're holding it together. But how long can you keep this up? He glanced at her, jaw tight, pain flickering across his features. As long as I have to. I will hold Jonah. I will secure the trusts. I will leave him a message that will guide him for life. And I will survive long enough for that, no matter what it costs me. Hours passed in tense anticipation. Chris's team made every move, broadcasted every accusation, but Elijah's strategy countered each attempt. Leaks of financial fraud, exposure of bribery, media pieces highlighting Chris's reckless endangerment, and verified witness statements nullifying false claims. Naomi felt a surge of hope, mingled with fear. The city outside teetered between chaos and revelation. Chris was imploding publicly, yet still posed a threat. Then, quietly, Elijah gestured toward her. Naomi. It's time. Together, they coordinated a final exposure. Financial misdeeds were revealed to regulators, bribery attempts were documented, and Chris's reckless behavior captured on live cameras. The media narrative began to shift. The villain, previously untouchable, was now collapsing under his own hubris. Naomi watched the live feed, heartbeat thundering. Chris Reeves, once confident, now stumbled in front of cameras, his own threats and lies backfiring spectacularly. Public opinion swung violently against him. Elijah sank back in his chair, hand brushing over his temple, exhaustion evident but determination unwavering. Naomi knelt beside him, whispering, "We did it. We survived this." He reached for Jonah, holding his son close. Naomi watched, tears flowing. For a brief, perfect moment, the chaos outside felt distant. The baby's tiny fingers wrapped around Elijah's hand. "I've lived long enough to see him safe," Elijah murmured, voice faint but clear. "Long enough to sign the trusts. Long enough to leave a message he'll hear one day, when he needs me most." Naomi's eyes widened. "Elijah, you're incredible." He smiled faintly, haunted yet proud. "No. Love is incredible. Protecting life is incredible. Strategy, patience. That's just survival." A final alert buzzed on the monitor. Chris Reeves' last legal ally had withdrawn. The empire that had once seemed untouchable was crumbling in real time. Naomi hugged both Jonah and Elijah, heart pounding, tears streaming. "We survived. And he won't hurt us again." Elijah's eyes flickered, hand pressing lightly to his temple. "We survived. But this isn't the end. Not for the world outside. Not for Jonah." The door to the hospital room clicked. A final camera crew appeared in the hallway, media attempting to capture the story, unaware of the private strategy and victories unfolding inside. Naomi's pulse spiked. She realized the fight, though victorious, had left scars, physical, emotional, and strategic. But Elijah, fragile yet unbroken, held the child and whispered, softly, "I'll survive long enough to guide him. Long enough to leave him a voice he'll hear when I'm gone." Jonah cooed softly in his father's arms, a tiny heartbeat of life and hope against the collapsing chaos outside. And for a moment, the city's noise, the cameras, the threats, they all faded. Naomi and Elijah, trauma-bonded and victorious, held the future in their hands. The hospital lights flickered. Outside, Chris Reeves' last desperate attempt loomed. Naomi swallowed, holding her breath. He's not done. Is he? Elijah's hand brushed over hers. No. But he's exposed. Vulnerable. And now, he will collapse entirely. And we will survive. Together. The hospital doors groaned. The next move would determine everything. Public perception, safety, and the fragile life resting in their arms. The hospital room was quiet now, save for the soft hum of monitors and Jonah's steady breathing. Elijah sat in his chair, fragile, pale, yet alert. Naomi rested in the bed beside him, exhausted, but fully awake, holding Jonah close. The city outside had quieted, for now, but the echoes of Chris Reeves' public implosion reverberated everywhere. News headlines, viral clips, social media posts. Elijah's hand trembled slightly as he reached for Jonah. The baby's tiny fingers curled around his own. His eyes, deep and haunted, softened. You'll remember me through this. Through every moment I can't be there, he whispered. I'll live in your voice, in these records, in the trusts I leave behind. You'll know me. Naomi rested her hand over his, tears in her eyes. Elijah, you've survived everything to get us here. You've protected him. Protected me. And, me too, from losing hope. He shook his head faintly, a faint smile crossing his lips. No. You've protected me too. Through your courage, your strength, your refusal to be afraid. That's what made all this possible. Outside, the media storm raged on. Chris Reeves' empire collapsed under the weight of his own hubris, financial exposure, and public scrutiny. Every move he'd made to intimidate, manipulate, and threaten was now evidence against him. Regulators were filing motions, investors were pulling out, and public opinion had turned mercilessly against him. His polished image had cracked, revealing the reckless, arrogant, and entitled man beneath. Naomi watched Elijah, absorbing the quiet heroism in every line of his face. You've given so much, for a child you'll never really watch grow up, she whispered. Elijah's eyes glimmered with pain and love. I'll be with him, always. In guidance, in stories, in this message. He held up the small recorder. I recorded something for Jonah. He'll hear it one day, when he's old enough to understand the world, and what courage really is. Naomi leaned forward, resting her forehead against his shoulder. Promise me. You won't hide from yourself anymore. Let us care for you. Let us fight with you, not just for him. He gave her a faint, haunted smile. I will, for as long as I can. But for now, we focus on survival. Strategic, patient survival. And the legacy. Days passed in a surreal blur of medical care, legal strategizing, and family moments. Elijah's body weakened. The tumor's progression was slow, relentless, but he refused to let it dominate him. Every conversation with Naomi was filled with both strategy and tenderness. Every glance at Jonah reminded him why he had endured, risked, and survived this long. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the hospital walls gold, Elijah held Jonah in his arms. Naomi watched him, overwhelmed with awe. You've fought everything, she whispered. Even your own body. He nodded, voice low and measured. And I will continue to fight. Long enough to leave him a world where fear doesn't rule. Where courage, kindness, and justice survive. Naomi's hand rested lightly on his cheek. You've already done that. Look at him. Look at us. Look at the world seeing Chris for who he really is. Elijah's eyes flickered to the monitor. Chris Reeves' last legal maneuver had crumbled completely. Investors withdrew, regulators intervened, and public perception was irreversible. Naomi saw the rare flash of satisfaction on Elijah's face. Not arrogance, not triumph, but quiet justice. Then, a soft tremor passed through him. Naomi gasped. Elijah. He smiled faintly, still holding Jonah. It's all right. I've lived long enough. Long enough to hold him, to see you safe, to know the world will see Chris's collapse, and that Jonah will have a father's guidance, even if it's in voice and memory. Hours later, he signed the final documents. Trusts, protections, and legal instructions ensuring Jonah's future security. Each signature was deliberate, calm, and purposeful. Naomi watched, heart pounding, tears flowing. Every stroke of the pen was a final act of love, strategy, and survival. Finally, he recorded the message he had promised. Softly, intimately, he spoke into the recorder. Jonah, if you are hearing this, know that your father loved you more than life itself. I fought, I endured, I lived to protect you. Be brave, be kind, and remember, courage and love are stronger than fear. This world will challenge you, but you carry my strength, and it will guide you. Always. Naomi pressed her lips to his shoulder as he finished. You've done everything. Everything a father could. Elijah exhaled, faint and trembling, but serene. Yes, everything. Enough for them. For Jonah, for you. In the early morning, he passed quietly, Jonah cradled in his arms. Naomi held both of them, weeping softly, but a strange sense of peace settled over her. The storm had passed, Chris Reeves' empire destroyed publicly, and Elijah's legacy secured in love, strategy, and courage. Years later, Jonah sat on the couch in a sunlit room, now grown, replaying the small recording his father had left him. The voice of Elijah, calm, loving, and firm, filled the room. Jonah, courage and love are stronger than fear. He paused the recording, feeling the weight of every word, every sacrifice, every moment his father had lived for him. Tears ran down his cheeks, not for loss alone, but for the love and bravery that had shaped him before he even understood the world. Naomi stood beside him, smiling softly. He's still with you, she whispered. In your heart, in your courage, in every choice you make. Jonah nodded, eyes steady. I know, Mom. I know. The camera zoomed out, the house quiet, sunlight spilling across the walls. A legacy forged in courage, love, and survival remained unbroken. The villain had fallen. The protector's love endured. And a child carried the strength of two survivors into the future. Years may pass, storms may rage, and villains may rise, but courage, love, and integrity leave marks that no force can erase. Elijah's sacrifice was not just for survival. It was for legacy, for hope, and for the reminder that one act of bravery can protect generations to come. Naomi's courage, Jonah's future, and the collapse of Chris Reeves' empire show that standing up, even quietly, strategically, and with heart, can change the course of life itself. This story isn't just theirs, it's a reflection of the moments we all face, the injustices we've seen, and the resilience we carry. It reminds us that even when life seems cruel, even when the odds are stacked against us, our choices, courage, and love can turn tragedy into triumph. Long enough to leave him a voice he'll hear when I'm gone. Jonah cooed softly in his father's arms, a tiny heartbeat of life and hope against the collapsing chaos outside. And for a moment, the city's noise, the cameras, the threats, they all faded. Naomi and Elijah, trauma-bonded and victorious, held the future in their hands. The hospital lights flickered. Outside, Chris Reeves' last desperate attempt loomed. Naomi swallowed, holding her breath. He's not done. Is he? Elijah's hand brushed over hers. No. But he's exposed. Vulnerable. And now, he will collapse entirely. And we will survive. Together. The hospital doors groaned. The next move would determine everything. Public perception, safety, and the fragile life resting in their arms. The hospital room was quiet now, save for the soft hum of monitors and Jonah's steady breathing. Elijah sat in his chair, fragile, pale, yet alert. Naomi rested in the bed beside him, exhausted, but fully awake, holding Jonah close. The city outside had quieted, for now, but the echoes of Chris Reeves' public implosion reverberated everywhere. News headlines, viral clips, social media posts. Elijah's hand trembled slightly as he reached for Jonah. The baby's tiny fingers curled around his own. His eyes, deep and haunted, softened. "You'll remember me through this. Through every moment I can't be there," he whispered. "I'll live in your voice, in these records, in the trusts I leave behind. You'll know me." Naomi rested her hand over his, tears in her eyes. "Elijah, you've survived everything to get us here. You've protected him. Protected me. And me too, from losing hope." He shook his head faintly, a faint smile crossing his lips. "No. You've protected me too. Through your courage, your strength, your refusal to be afraid. That's what made all this possible." Outside, the media storm raged on. Chris Reeves' empire collapsed under the weight of his own hubris, financial exposure, and public scrutiny. Every move he'd made to intimidate, manipulate, and threaten was now evidence against him. Regulators were filing motions, investors were pulling out, and public opinion had turned mercilessly against him. His polished image had cracked, revealing the reckless, arrogant, and entitled man beneath. Naomi watched Elijah, absorbing the quiet heroism in every line of his face. "You've given so much, for a child you'll never really watch grow up," she whispered. Elijah's eyes glimmered with pain and love. "I'll be with him, always. In guidance, in stories, in this message." He held up the small recorder. "I recorded something for Jonah. He'll hear it one day, when he's old enough to understand the world, and what courage really is." Naomi leaned forward, resting her forehead against his shoulder. "Promise me, you won't hide from yourself anymore. Let us care for you. Let us fight with you, not just for him." He gave her a faint, haunted smile. "I will, for as long as I can. But for now, we focus on survival. Strategic, patient survival. And the legacy." Days passed in a surreal blur of medical care, legal strategizing, and family moments. Elijah's body weakened. The tumor's progression was slow, relentless, but he refused to let it dominate him. Every conversation with Naomi was filled with both strategy and tenderness. Every glance at Jonah reminded him why he had endured, risked, and survived this long. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the hospital walls gold, Elijah held Jonah in his arms. Naomi watched him, overwhelmed with awe. "You've fought everything," she whispered. "Even your own body." He nodded, voice low and measured. "And I will continue to fight, long enough to leave him a world where fear doesn't rule. Where courage, kindness, and justice survive." Naomi's hand rested lightly on his cheek. "You've already done that. Look at him. Look at us. Look at the world seeing Chris for who he really is." Elijah's eyes flickered to the monitor. Chris Reeves' last legal maneuver had crumbled completely. Investors withdrew, regulators intervened, and public perception was irreversible. Naomi saw the rare flash of satisfaction on Elijah's face. Not arrogance, not triumph, but quiet justice. Then, a soft tremor passed through him. Naomi gasped. "Elijah." He smiled faintly, still holding Jonah. "It's all right. I've lived long enough. Long enough to hold him, to see you safe, to know the world will see Chris's collapse, and that Jonah will have a father's guidance, even if it's in voice and memory." Hours later, he signed the final documents. Trusts, protections, and legal instructions ensuring Jonah's future security. Each signature was deliberate, calm, and purposeful. Naomi watched, heart pounding, tears flowing. Every stroke of the pen was a final act of love, strategy, and survival. Finally, he recorded the message he had promised. Softly, intimately, he spoke into the recorder. "Jonah, if you are hearing this, know that your father loved you more than life itself. I fought, I endured, I lived to protect you. Be brave, be kind, and remember, courage and love are stronger than fear. This world will challenge you, But you carry my strength, and it will guide you. Always. Naomi pressed her lips to his shoulder as he finished. You've done everything. Everything a father could. Elijah exhaled, faint and trembling, but serene. Yes, everything. Enough for them. For Jonah, for you. In the early morning, he passed quietly, Jonah cradled in his arms. Naomi held both of them, weeping softly, but a strange sense of peace settled over her. The storm had passed, Chris Reeves' empire destroyed publicly, and Elijah's legacy secured in love, strategy, and courage. Years later, Jonah sat on the couch in a sunlit room, now grown, replaying the small recording his father had left him. The voice of Elijah, calm, loving, and firm, filled the room. Jonah, courage and love are stronger than fear. He paused the recording, feeling the weight of every word, every sacrifice, every moment his father had lived for him. Tears ran down his cheeks, not for loss alone, but for the love and bravery that had shaped him before he even understood the world. Naomi stood beside him, smiling softly. He's still with you, she whispered. In your heart, in your courage, in every choice you make. Jonah nodded, eyes steady. I know, Mom. I know. The camera zoomed out, the house quiet, sunlight spilling across the walls. A legacy forged in courage, love, and survival remained unbroken. The villain had fallen. The protector's love endured. And a child carried the strength of two survivors into the future. Years may pass, storms may rage, and villains may rise, but courage, love, and integrity leave marks that no force can erase. Elijah's sacrifice was not just for survival. It was for legacy, for hope, and for the reminder that one act of bravery can protect generations to come. Naomi's courage, Jonah's future, and the collapse of Chris Reeves' empire show that standing up, even quietly, strategically, and with heart, can change the course of life itself. This story isn't just theirs, it's a reflection of the moments we all face, the injustices we've seen, and the resilience we carry. It reminds us that even when life seems cruel, even when the odds are stacked against us, our choices, courage, and love can turn tragedy into triumph. If this story moved you, subscribe, share this story, honor those who fight quietly but fiercely, and let it inspire someone today to act boldly, protect fiercely, and live fully, because love and courage are stronger than fear.